that hooks to the trigger of the gun. And it runs over in a little tube, and in this case over to Katie. It's called a puffer. And she could hold it like this, and she could puff on it like a straw. And she would look at the monitor, okay, and Dr. Brunson was looking through the scope, and whatever the crosshairs was on, Katie could see on the monitor, and when the crosshairs got to the target, she would just give a little puff, and the gun would fire. And I've got pictures of the targets that she shot at 80 yards, a little 5.5-inch target, and she hit it twice, okay? And all she did was puff on the deal because she couldn't hold the gun. She was too crippled. She was too weak. The doctors didn't want her banged around. When she went to the ground blind that night, the scope takes one picture every time the gun is fired, okay? We've got a picture of this buck feeding at about 80 yards away with the crosshairs right behind his shoulder, just as Katie puffed on the puffer. And the gun has already fired. The bullet is actually somewhere between the gun and the deer. The deer's got his head down and he's eating, okay? We called it the Last Supper. He had no clue. He only had about 6 seconds of his life left. But that's the kind of stuff that Catch a Dream does for these kids, okay? And as neat as that is, one of the greatest things that we get to experience is when we go back to the lodge, we do a little thing called the presentation. And the presentation is where you separate all the fun that we just had on the hunt or the fishing trip. We send kids deep sea fishing, antelope hunting, just whatever the kids' dreams are. To date, we've done 47 states. We've had kids from 47 states go on a Catch a Dream trip. But after it's all over and we go back to the lodge or wherever we're going to do it, I've done it. I've made presentations a couple times in a restaurant because we'd go out to a restaurant after the hunt was over. But anyhow, the presentation is really the crux of what Catch a Dream does. Catch a Dream takes these children and their families, back up 1 second here. Part of what we do, part of the criteria is that at least one parent, preferably both, and any siblings follow that child on this dream trip, on this hunt. So matter of fact, every hunt I've been on, we've had both mom and dad, and a lot of times we've had brothers and sisters accompany us on this hunt. Catch a Dream pays 100%, whether it's the plane ticket or the trip expense, it doesn't matter. Catch a Dream 100% pays for everything, including the clothing for the children, just everything. And after this is all over, and we're back at a lodge, after the hunt's all over, we have what is called the presentation. The presentation is very simply where we just very gently take these families and these kids away from that hunting experience, as good as it is, okay? And we get to present the gospel to them. We actually give them a camouflage Bible, okay? And we highlight in there different verses, and we read down different verses. And we chat with these kids, not just about killing that big deer, because most of these kids and these parents know, point blank, a lot of these kids don't have long to go. We sit there with Katie, okay, a little over a month ago, knowing maybe she wasn't going to eat Thanksgiving dinner, okay? We watched her mom and dad, tears streaming down their face as we was talking to these kids and giving presentations to these kids. One of the things that Dr. Brunson does is we have a little deal that if they make 21, we make a special deal out of it. And because that's a goal, obviously, to try to give these kids a chance to look forward to something. And during the presentation, he talked about, Katie seeing 21 and all over. And after it was over, her mom took us off to the side, and with tears streaming down her face, she said, "We don't think Katie's going to see 21, but on the day of her 21st birthday, can I stand in for her for Catch a Dream?" And Dr. Brent said, "Yeah, you can do that. You can stand in for Katie if she doesn't make it to see 21. Can I tell you, the very first one I ever went on was a kid up in Michigan on a little deer hunt, crippled little kid, couldn't walk. He couldn't hold a gun either. His dad had to wrap his hands around it. At the end of the presentation, we went outside and was actually packing things up, and I'd given Nick that Bible, and his dad come out and took me by the side, and I'll never forget it. He said, "When we bury Nick," he didn't say if we bury Nick, he said when we bury Nick, he said, "I'm going to put that Bible in his coffin. I want him to have it forever." And I said, I said, man, that's going to be your choice. And he actually started to turn and walked away, and he stopped and he come back and he says, you know what? He says, can I change my mind? He said, when I bury Nick, I want to keep that Bible forever because it's got his name in it. He said, can I do that? I said, yeah, you can do that. It's yours. You guys can do it however you want to. Can I tell you guys, Catch a Dream and what we're trying to do with Sportsman's Fest is not about fun, food, and fellowship. Can I just somehow get that across to you? Can I tell you that the pastor's vision is not fun, food, and fellowship? Can I get that across to you? Can I tell you that 3 years ago when I started with Catch a Dream, I had no clue that this February the 5th, the executive director of Catch a Dream was going to stand on a goofy ladder stand in here and make a presentation to what we expect to be 500 or 600 people with an altar call? Can I tell you that's a God thing? Can you grasp what I'm trying to say here? This is not me or Virgil or the pastor. That's a God thing. That's 3 years ago in the making, okay, of a crazy phone call thinking I was talking to a receptionist, okay, not realizing who I was talking to. And he's going to be on our stage. And thanks to some kindness from the board, he's going to carry over. By the way, Sportsman's Fest is on a Friday night. Dr. Brunson's going to be on our platform Sunday morning for the Sunday morning service. So if you don't make Catch a Dream, or if you don't make Sportsman's Fest, you're still going to get a little flavor of Dr. Brunson. We're excited about what this ministry is going to do for this church. It is fun. But can I tell you, the pastor and I was talking the other day. He said, I said, Pastor, don't you think maybe there's a little misconception about what Sportsman's Fest is? He said, oh, man. He said, I know there is. I said, don't you think a lot of people think this thing is fun, food, and fellowship? In his exact words, because I was getting ready to say this to him, he said, dude, he said, there's too much work in this for this just to be a fun night. I said, you got that right, Pastor. There's tens of hundreds of hours being put into this. And not just by me, by a whole bunch of people. By a bunch of people that are still going to take time to put in. I mean, transforming this stage. Bill's a great guy and I love him to death, but can I tell you, he'd probably rather be doing something else. But because it's a ministry, he's going to give up his evenings and weekends to work on something really special because he loves this church. Can I tell you, and I say this very kindly, there's not a person that's involved in our Easter drama that would still be involved every year if it was just fun, food, and fellowship. If it wasn't a ministry, can I tell you, nobody would, I shouldn't say nobody, very few people would be involved in that. There's too much work. It's not fun, food, and it's a ministry. And I hope I've somehow conveyed just a little bit about what we're trying to accomplish, what we've got planned for this year. Pastor talked on it, took a little of my thunder, doggone him, talking about lining the foyer with mounts. Man, I've got enough mounts. We might line the whole walls in here. I got mounts coming from everywhere. I think it's cool. I had one guy say he's got 12. I'm excited. So we're going to have a lot of neat things. If you haven't been to Sportsman's Fest, come this year. Come see what that evening is about for this church. Because can I tell you, it's more than fun, food, and fellowship, guys. It really is.